So are the Bible stories true, and should we use them to teach our children? Hey guys, it's John here, sitting here drinking my coffee in the fabulous John of New Studios, right here in fabulous Akron, Ohio. I'm here this morning, and I want to talk to you guys about a comment that came in, because I think it's a really good one. And I'm just going to go ahead and read it. I grew up being told that all of the stories in the Bible are absolutely and literally true, such as Adam and Eve, Noah, Jonah and the whale, etc., etc. God basically wrote the Bible through human hands. What is your opinion of all these types of stories that children get told? If it interests you, I'd love to hear a video on it. What is my opinion on all these stories that children get told? Well, these are ancient moral stories. They're stories to teach you a lesson. Many of them are based in historical things that happened, and stories get built around it. Like the guy who goes out fishing and catches a guppy and tells everyone he caught a whale, right? So these stories get built around some factual evidence. For instance, the flood. We know because of archaeological evidence that there was a great flood of some kind. There's evidence all over the world, even in Native American culture, that talk about the Great Flood. It comes down to the idea that there was some sort of flood story. Noah was probably somebody who survived the flood, right? And his story grew over time. He probably saved his farm animals and his family, and then the story grew to all the animals of the earth 2 by 2, and the story grew into a mythological spectrum. But when you look at these stories, it's a matter of are they factual? Well, no, they're not. They are now mythology based upon some things that probably did happen, but in reality, they are still mythology. But the question is there a morality to it? Is there something in there that we should learn from? This is a very interesting concept, because morality, when these books were written, was very different from morality today. If God is love, do we negate people who love differently than we? Do we negate, LGBTQ people for the idea of the way they love? In today's world, it would be morally wrong to negate them for who they are. Back then, it would have been very different, a very different idea, right? The moralities have changed over time. Back then, you were allowed to beat your slave so long as he didn't die, because if he died, then you were culpable, right? Back then, women were treated as property, and the whole idea of the virginal birth thing and the virgins in general is permeating throughout all the biblical culture. And it's about, the woman is supposed to be chaste. She's supposed to be a virgin when she enters into marriage. And so it came down to the idea that the whole virginal thing is not about miraculous stuff. It's about the morality of this woman who is my property has to be chaste, has to be virginal. When she's handed off to a man to be married and bear children. So the moralities of the time are different. My nephew told a story, and I'm not going to tell the story because it's his personal story, but he told a story that was, to me, beautiful story. And it was a story I don't even remember, but it was a story he said that happened with me when he was a very young man. He said something that what I felt was a moral ambiguity or morally wrong, and my response was, "Well, that's very disappointing." And now he's 40, and that story is still profound in his mind. That is his Jonah story. That is his Noah story. That is that story of that morality moment was the story that stayed with him. To me personally, I think we ought to let go of a lot of these stories, let go of all of these stories, and start living beautiful, loving lives as an example for our children. I think the more we can be the ones here in the present who are giving the lessons in real time in the present moment, then we can change the world. But as long as we stay stuck in the moralities of the past, we're losing our ability to change the world. We're actually locking ourselves into a 2,000-year-old paradigm that no longer serves. Another thing you said in here is God basically wrote the Bible through human hands. If that's true, then God is a terrible writer because, let's see, Judas killed himself in two different ways in the Bible. There's just so many different contradictions. God is a jealous and vengeful God. God is love. There are so many contradictions and so many crazy stories in there, and so many of these stories that have been blown up to become something of more of a myth than they really are. The Bible itself is interesting because the earliest text we have, that we know of date-wise of the New Testament stuff, is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is 200 years afterwards. It's like saying that the books that are written right now about, let's see, what's it, 2000? So you're talking about, from the 1800s are exactly accurate, right? The books that are written right now from word of mouth about the 1800s are perfectly accurate. And we know that that's not true. And you go back in the 1950s and you watch the old cowboy movies, or the 1960s and the old cowboy movies, and they look all homogeneous and light blue and big powdery hats and all this stuff. And you watch the cowboy movies now, which they're trying to be more accurate. It looks nothing like the old 50s movies because of the fact that in that every time they were looking back in history, they were looking at the filter of their time, and it was changing for the filter of their time. And when you look at this idea of God writing the Bible, there was a guy that I knew who was a devout Christian, and I asked him one time, I said, so let me ask you a question. The Bible is made up of all these books, and many of these books were cut out after the Nicene Council. The books got pared down, become less and less, and the accepted Bible became the norm. And even that got changed multiple times. But all those books that came before, are they equally as valid as all the books that get left in the Bible? And his response was, I have to believe that the hand of God was there in the choosing. And I want you to really focus on the idea that he said, I have to. He has to believe it for his faith to work. He has to believe it for his religion to be accurate. The Bible is a bunch of books and a bunch of notes that were written down hundreds of years afterwards. Dan McClellan, who I find really fascinating, he's a Mormon biblical scholar, but he's very good about the fact that he comes at it from a data standpoint. And he calls it data, not dogma. And I like that because, and there are some things that I disagree with him on, and some things most things I agree with him on. There are some things I disagree with him on because of the context. The context of the filter that the scholarship is going through. But it's very rare because he's very, very good. And he's very good about pointing things out. He talks about the oneness of God, how Yeshua wanted us all to actually do as he did, which is the stuff I talk about regularly. He does lean into the idea that there was no J. Well, historically, he's correct. There was no J, but no one knows how it was pronounced. And in my regression, it was Yeshua with a Y and a J kind of mixed sound. So the pronunciations, we don't know what they are because no one had a recorder. So it really, no matter who you're listening to, there's always something in there that you have to go, okay, we're taking this on supposition. We suppose this because of this. And so, but I love his work, Dan McClellan. I love his work because he does debunk stuff. He debunks religion, which I find just utterly fascinating. But once again, when you go into his stuff, he talks about the idea of where these originally came from, what was the agenda of the people who were writing it, and he never doesn't talk about it being written by the hand of God. Because once you start adding that hand of God, that's the mythology that makes this infallible. And that is the thing that makes wars and violence and anger and frustration. So I would rather show my children a loving present moment than to feed them moralities and stories of the past. I would rather do the right thing now and be the example of how to live your life. I remember as a child, I'm going to put myself out there in a weird way. My brother Michael had a collection of Playboys and other various sorts of magazines of that nature. And I found one, and I took it and I hid it under my mattress. And my mom found it. She didn't get mad, but driving to church, and I can remember this, I can remember exactly where we were. I can remember the exact, which car we were in. And I remember her literally saying these words: respect women. Respect women. And for those of you who know Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, we were coming from Dewey Beach. We were just about to cross the Silver Lake Bridge into Rehoboth. That's exactly where we were when she said this. And I remember this moment: respect women. And I knew, because she had told me she found the book, but the guilt of having the book, the idea of perversion for having the book never came into play. The only thing that mattered was respect women. And so when my nephew told me the story that he told me, it tied right into my own story. That was the morality I learned from my mom. And so that was a present moment. It had nothing to do with Noah or Moses or Jonah and whales and any of that stuff. It had to do with living a beautiful, loving, present moment. And that's the key. That's the key to life. Make your present moment present, fearless, and when you're fearless, you're loving. So just be loving. Present and loving. Live a loving life. And that is the best story you could ever tell your children, by example, showing them what loving life is. I remember when my friend Holly's house got hit by a tornado. I called my son. I said, we need to go help Holly. And he says, okay, and didn't spat an eye. I said to him, it's kind of, I appreciate the fact that you were just willing to come. And Kynan's word was, that's what we do for family. Now, Holly's not a member of our immediate family, our blood family, but Holly is a member of our family. And I was so proud of my son to say, that's what we do for family. Because humanity is our family. Give the example. Make people smile. Be the morality that you want to see in the world. And that's my thought on this. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.